What's up, YouTube? Welcome to part 8 of my Predator cosplay build. Today we're going to be doing the right gauntlet, aka the wrist blades. And without further ado, let's just go right on ahead and jump into the video. Okay, so the first thing I had to make for this was this right here. And what this is going to be the shell that I'm going to build the gauntlet over. And these top and bottom pieces are not in the patterns. They're exclusive to me. If you want me to send you that and you purchase patterns, or you just want me to send it to you on on Facebook, I will do that. But unless you have the exact same arm size as me, it's not going to fit you. So to get your arm size, you're going to need to wrap your arm in either plastic wrap or an old grocery bag and then cover that in duct tape. Once you have your arm wrapped and covered in duct tape, you're going to want to cut up along each side, along the top and the back of your arm, which will give you your two basic pattern pieces. Now I made this shell out of 1/2 inch thick EVA foam mats. You can see it has the texturing on the inside here. And you'll also notice that I've already attached velcro. And as you will notice, this piece rests well behind my wrist joint, and the end of it is well behind the actual end of my arm or my elbow. That is to allow me to have some mobility, and the actual gauntlet is going to be much longer than this. But I want to have this dead space here so that it doesn't interfere with my bicep, and I want to have some space here so that I can move my wrist, and also so that I will have space for the end of my gloves that I'm going to have to shove up underneath the actual gauntlet. I don't want anybody to see, my Predator hands are actually just gloves that I altered. So that's the basis of the shell. Once you get your shell, you're going to need to cut out the top base, 1B and 1A. You're going to need 3 of these and 1 of these. And I'm going to take a heat gun and heat these so that they are curved and will match up overlapping on the top of this piece here. Alright, I used my trusty Drill Master heat gun to curve my foam pieces. Now I did end up using 8mm EVA foam for this, but I think you could use either 5 or even as large as like 1/2 inch thick like the mats here if you want something that looks really bulky. Or if you're just a larger person and you need to scale up your patterns, feel free to enlarge the size of your foam as well, or minimize it so it looks more sleek. And if anybody was wondering too, this is going to be loosely based off the wrist blade gauntlet from Alien vs. Predator, if you were wondering what the inspiration was. But the 1A pieces I heated and glued on, starting from the front, 1, 2, 3, and then my 1B piece, of course, in the rear. Now, each one of these pieces are overlapped. Here, I'll show you here when I match the pattern up with it. They are overlapped by about, let me get this even. Okay, by 3/4, nope, sorry, not 3/4, about 1 inch of overlap from the front to the back. This can change depending upon your preference as far as how long you need it to be. For example, some people's arms are longer than others, but this is where I space mine up to fit myself. Alright, so next I have these 2 pieces that I cut out of more of the 1/2 inch thick foam. And these are going to be side pieces that are going to get glued on either side. These had some texture on the bottom. I went through and sanded it just so the contact cement would stick a little bit better. And I am going to heat and curve these somewhat. Initially I had made a piece to wrap all the way around, but it makes this so unbearably stiff that there's no give or flex or move in it. If you're going to put that much foam together, it's not really going to want to bend. So by having pieces here for each side, I'm still leaving the bottom area here completely exposed. That way it can have some flex and some movement. And a nice thing about this particular pattern piece, I transferred my patterns onto foam. I don't leave them on cardstock or paper. I will initially, but then I always transfer them. But the nice thing about this pattern piece here is, if you're curious as to just exactly how I line these up, this pattern piece will kind of serve as a marker and a guide for all that. Okay, so next thing, now that I have both these on, is to start working at the top. And perhaps, I feel some people think it doesn't matter what order they assemble these in? Kind of does. And part of the reason why I did this is because now this will sit flat and level. So I can much more easily work on it as I start to build up everything here as far as the blades themselves. Okay, next I'm going to use the blade mount top piece and the blade mount sides. And these I've cut out of 1/2 inch thick EVA foam mat. You'll notice there's a texture on the back. It doesn't bond the greatest, so I did take and sand down the inside of this here so that whenever I glue them, they will match up nicely. And the other thing of note I did on this is I cut this bottom here at an angle, so on both sides, opposing angles, so that whenever this gets glued on, it will be nice and flush. And of course, to glue this on, I am as usual going to use contact cement. First, gluing these three together, starting with this piece along the back edge here and curving it to match, and then gluing this one on top, and then putting the entire assembly on here. And this piece as well can be used to measure and check as you're applying these pieces to get an idea of where they're going to set. So I'm going to go ahead and use my contact cement and glue these together. Okay, I have this piece together here. And I used a Sharpie to very lightly draw on the lines here. If you press too hard with a Sharpie, sometimes it does leave an indentation in the foam. And it's kind of hard to get out even with the heat gun, although there are other pieces that are going to go on here, so maybe you don't need to worry about it that much. But yeah, next step is using contact cement to put this on. Alright, now that I have the top piece here all glued on, I'm going to start next with the accent pieces. Here I have the blade mount access piece 1 is essentially a rectangle with a slightly tapered end. And this will start here, lined up at the back and going straight down the center. So there is about a 1/4 inch gap on either side. Then you're going to have the blade mount accent piece number 2, which will go directly in front of that. And this is in 5mm foam, and this is in 1/2 inch thick EVA foam. This, the next piece, accent blade mount accent number 3, is also going to be lined up with the angles back here, flat with the end, and once again there's about a little bit more than an 1/8 inch of space. And on top of that, this is pretty much just a plain rectangular piece, is 2mm EVA foam, and this is the blade mount accent number 4, which will go in the center of that. Okay, so next I added the number 5 blade mount accent piece, and I also put on the left blade mount front accent, which is what it comes with. But to get the right, all you do is just flip that over, and I centered that on the front. And I haven't put this one on yet, but I marked it on the side so y'all could see it. I matched this up more or less with that. There's a slight gap here, and then I just mark it with a Sharpie and go ahead and contact cement this on. Alright, now I have some 1/8 inch acrylic plexiglass. Clear, doesn't matter if it's clear or not, I just happen to have clear. And I'm taking this blade centerpiece pattern that I very crudely cut out. It kind of doesn't matter. All it's serving as is something to stabilize the actual foam blade. Now, as everybody's watching this, I'm certain you're either thinking or saying, why don't you just take this pattern and cut it out of the plexiglass and you have something solid? Well, I could, but the problem is where I live and the rules of the conventions, they usually don't allow this. And I have to have foam weapons. But there's no rules and they don't check if it has a solid core. So I'm going to use this piece to cut out a strip of plexiglass, which will be sandwiched in between 2 of these pattern pieces for each blade. So I traced these out and I'm going to go ahead and cut them out with a Dremel. I cut out the 2 inside pieces with a Dremel. They're definitely not perfect, but it kind of doesn't matter. You just need to be relatively close enough. And I used a Dremel with definitely not the right type of cutting head for this task, but whatever. Then I scuffed them up on some rough sandpaper so that I have something for the adhesive to bond to a little better. Whenever they're super smooth, it doesn't work so hot. Okay, next I'm going to cut out 4 of the blade pattern pieces and put this together. So I have already glued in the center plastic piece using some regular old household super glue. And then I went and applied some of my contact cement to both sides, and I'm going to go ahead and glue these together. Okay, so once I got these together, I took my X-Acto knife here and cut some lines and grooves into this. And then using my Drill Master heat gun, I heated it up so that those areas would expand, and those are acting as guidelines for my Dremel work, which is not only evening out like the sides and some of the edges here that I'm working on, but also to put some tapers on the insides here of these lines. Alright, so I went ahead and glued in both of the blades here on the inside of the right and left pieces, and I evened them up so that they butted up nicely against this. The angle with which you put them in is of course up to you. That is the angle that I wanted. And now that they're in there and lined up, I have the blade base cover here, which I will place like so, and go ahead and glue that on. Alright, next I went through and I added some details like poking some holes into here to give the effect of rivets, for example. And I also took some vinyl on fabric specialty coating. This stuff absorbs into stuff really well, especially cloth that's meant for dashboards, panels, seats, carpets, things like that. And since I didn't have black industrial strength velcro and I wasn't going to go out and buy it since I have a bunch of this white, I just went ahead and dyed it with this. I also had some tubing laying around, which I cut and then glued to both sides. And next, I'm going to mask off the velcro, and I'm going to use some Plasti Dip and do these up. Now that the Plasti Dip is dried, I use some Wicked Silver that I thinned out through my airbrush to do some overspray. Alright, and the final thing that I had done on this was I did add some clear coat to it. I didn't put the clear coat very heavy on the main body itself, but on the blades I actually did. So hopefully this video gave you guys some ideas for your own cosplays and your own projects. And as always, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. And if you're not a subscriber, please consider if you'd like to see more content like this. And as always, everyone out there that's watching, have a great day.